Lovely. So, first and foremost, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Zoom is amazing. Virtual events are amazing because we're all here in this space together. I am very excited to welcome all of you to this space to start our panel discussion. So just before we start, a very quick round of introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Jack, and it is an absolute pleasure to be able to be your moderator for the Corporate Life panel discussion today. Obviously, before we start, there are some ground rules and expectations that I do have to set for all the participants. First and foremost, this panel discussion will be from 9 to 10 a.m. Montreal time, a total of 60 minutes time. The panelist is going to will try to keep our answers concise and we'll try to be on time as well. Number two is, since that we're in a virtual setting, we would very much appreciate it if all of you could switch on your camera and utilize the reaction button in Zoom just to engage with the panelists, show that you agree with some of the points. And if you have any questions, feel free to deposit those in the chat box as well. To the panelists, if your environment allows you to do so, it would be very much helpful if you can be unmute all the time, so you can sort of engage with each other as well. Last but not least, we will also be using Pigeonhole for live questions. I am actually going to be sending the link in the chat in about 2 seconds time. If you have any questions that you wanted to ask the panelists, please head towards Pigeonhole. Deposit your question over there, as well as vote on the questions. And then there will be a section where I'll go through these questions and ask the panelists as well. So without further ado, I am very, very excited to introduce to you our amazing team of panelists today. We're very fortunate to have the opportunity to be joined by 7 extraordinary individuals today. First and foremost, we have, of course, Natalia, which is the Google account strategist for mid-market. We have Madhur, the founder and CEO for MSPL Consulting. Tola, the head of marketing for Pladis Global. Renal, talent consultant for Shortlist Professionals. Kate, senior P2P analyst for Tata Consultancy Services. Raphael, strategic account executive for Salesforce. My apologies for this slide over there. But yeah, strategic account executive for Salesforce. Last but definitely not least, it seems to me that we're missing one panelist over here, which is James Akuma. But no worries, we'll try to see if he can join us soon as well. So to kick things off, I am going to stop this screen share and I am going to start asking a couple of questions. Of course, the very first question to kickstart this panel would be to start with a quick round of self-introduction from our amazing team of panelists. Throughout that conversation as well, it is also very important to answer one single question in one sentence. Why should young people join the corporate sector? Now, we'll start with Natalia.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Natalia. I come from Colombia, and I'm currently working as an account strategist at Google in Dublin, as Jack already said. With being an account strategist in Google means that I work with companies and I consult them to help them grow using Google Ads. It is a sales position, and I advise on marketing products. And my one advice for people is about that a big corporation is likely to have a brand recognition with an existing and loyalty customer base. And that gives you the opportunity to actually innovate in other areas. Having feedback of clients already, it's very rewarding that you can see your single contribution impacting the way things are done. So that will be my one and single advice.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Natalia, for that brief self-introduction. We shall move on to Madhur.
Hey guys, you can get a lot of structure and governance in the corporate sector. If it's an international company, you can get the opportunity to work in a few places and with different people, which is very similar to what you probably did in AIESEC. Back to you, Jack.
Lovely. I noticed that you haven't had the chance to introduce yourself. Do you maybe want to take a quick minute just to go through a little bit about yourself, your company as well?
Sure. So I was in AIESEC in the mid-80s. I was National Committee President of AIESEC India in 86, 87. And then I concluded my master's after that, went on a traineeship to Helsinki in 89, 90. and even managed to get hypothermia as I was a boy from the tropics. With the trainees over there, we just had a 30-year reunion back in Helsinki a couple of years ago. After my traineeship, I got an MBA and I started a career in investment banking. So I used to be at JP Morgan, and then I moved to Standard Chartered. And I've always wanted an international career after AIESEC. That kind of solidified it. I left banking in January of this year, so I'm 6 months old as an entrepreneur. I run a consulting company. I work with tech companies, mid-sized companies, and SMEs. And I focus on various things such as business planning, transformation, stakeholder management, and enjoying my entrepreneurial life. Back to you, Jack.
Lovely, thank you very much. So cool, let us move to Tola for the quick self-introduction, as well as to answer the question, why should young people join the corporate sector?
All right, thanks, Jack, and nice to meet everyone here. So Tola has done a lot of sales and marketing over 20 years. I've worked in West Africa, Middle East markets, and mainly I've been privileged to work in multinationals all my life, coming straight from AIESEC. And over time, what I've realized is that marketing and brand building is what I enjoy doing. I like to see that the strategies I write on my table transform into actionable insights, and that consumers are able to live up to their expectations. Proposition in which I've set them to set out corporate. I think for me, there's a lot of tech advancements and early adoption, and because they're naturally, they have an affinity for tech, it makes them ready adaptable to a lot of the changes. I think is unimaginable, because a lot of times I find myself learning from quite young people in the organization, and that's very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tola, for that amazing introduction. We shall now hop on to Ray for your self-introduction, as well as that quick answer for question. Yeah, Ray.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Jack. I'm excited to be here with all of you. AIESEC is an organization I really hold dear to my heart. My last AIESEC experience, I think, active experience was in 2018 when I was the MCVP for TM for AIESEC in Kenya, and I think we served on the MCTM team at the same time as Jack. Currently, I am the board of advisors chair for AIESEC in Kenyatta University. I can see some of my members are already joined. Glad to see you guys here. And currently outside of AIESEC, I work for a global tech-driven recruitment firm. And what I do is that I recruit for senior level executives, all the way from manager level to director to even CEOs and COOs. And just to answer that question, why would you want to join these other sectors? And the answer is very clear. It's because these sectors need you. Yeah, like Abdo said, we cannot have like all our great talent in entrepreneurship or in philanthropy and forget all these other sectors, the government sector, the private sector, which accounts for 60% of the workforce. We need each and every one of your bright minds in all these sectors so that we can influence a global change and ensure that we actually drive towards our potential as humans. Yeah, thank you, Jack.
Amazing. Now let us move on to Kate to kick off your self-introduction, as well as that the answer to the question just then.
Hi, Jack. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Kate, as you figured out, and I'm a finance specialist. I have 6 years experience in counting. This is my 4th country and my 3rd continent of working, thanks to AIESEC. I was an MCVP in the year 2015-16 in Rwanda for FLA and expansions. And what I can say briefly, why would people join corporate? Do you like money? Join corporate. Do you like to grow in your career? Join corporate. Do you like to network? This is where you should be. Do you like to grow personally? You should, because otherwise you actually don't have a choice in corporate. You need to grow, otherwise you will not survive. That's all from me. Thank you.
Lovely, amazing answer. But yeah, last but definitely not least as well, I want to pass the floor to Raphael to go through his self-introduction as well as answering the question that's posed. Hafar?
Awesome, thanks, thanks, Jack. So hi everybody, Raphael here, or Rafa or Raf, whatever you prefer to call me. Originally from Brazil, but around 10 years outside. That is around the time that I had my last AIESEC experience as well. So I was part of AIESEC in Brazil. I started in LLC. I was part of the national team in Brazil. And then my last experience was in the national team of China, mainland China, that I know that we have Hong Kong and Taiwan separate, right? So we used to be called mainland China. And currently I'm part of Salesforce, that is the fastest growing enterprise software company in the world. As a strategic account executive, so basically doing sales. Have worked in a few countries, so besides Brazil, China, Germany, because of my AIESEC internship in DHL. Used to live just across the street of the German MC team, and now in Singapore for 6+ years. To the question, well, I really like the last answer, right? So, you know, especially I am in sales, I've just started a new role, and, you know, basically my compensation is 50-50, 50% is based out of incentive of closing results, right? So that is definitely an incentive, but my answer, in fact, is going to go to a different direction. That is, join corporate if you really want to make an impact. Our CEO from Salesforce, Mark Benioff, has a book called Trailblazer that basically talks about the idea that businesses is the best platform for you to have an impact. And you see technology companies, right, are revolutionizing the world. Natalia is part of Google that revolutionized so many industries. Salesforce is revolutionizing the way that companies connect with their customers. But I was part of a conversation with the CEO of Petronas, that is an oil and gas company. And I was really surprised with the question of, you know, what is his top priority? And he said that is, I work for a company that is in the carbon business, and I have the challenge of being carbon neutral in 10 years. And honestly, you know, people complain about the oil and gas industry, but I truly believe that if you want to make the world carbon neutral, that is the industry to be. Because if your business is that is where you have the biggest opportunity to make an impact. So that is my answer. Join business if you want to have a strong impact, because businesses generate the revenue and can invest in the impact. Back to you, Jack.
Lovely, very interesting answer indeed. And thank you very much again for all the panelists for your quick self-introduction, as well as this amazing and thought-provoking answer as well, right? I think one of the main things that I've just started joining the corporate about 2 years ago. And one of the main thing is, you know, definitely real change requires investments and resources, and businesses are the ones that holds most resources in this world. And so without businesses, without profitability, without the flow of money, it is sometimes very hard for us to, you know, drive real changes as well, which is why, you know, it leads very nicely into our first question of the day itself. We've seen a lot of this, you know, like legendary figures that are gathered in this room with some close to like 10 years AIESEC experience, all the way to, you know, like 20-30 years ago. And so one of the main questions is that all of us here are now working in corporates. There are certain things, certain AIESEC skills and experiences that are more important than the others. And so I'm actually very interested to know about these, right? I want to zoom into Madhur and Ray to maybe answer the question, what are some of the AIESEC skills, learnings, and experiences that you personally find extremely valuable in the corporate sector, and especially in this time of pandemic and this, you know, new reality? Maybe we can start with Madhur first.
Sure. So, you know, AIESEC, when I was in AIESEC, we were in about 62 countries. And there was a fair amount of networking we used to do. We didn't have the ability of WhatsApp or Telegram or email. It was all letters at that point in time. It was in the mid to late 80s. But we learned how to network. We learned how to create our own networks. And I continued that in my corporate life. And today I'm an entrepreneur and I continue that too. But once it's ingrained into you to network and reach out to people and try and figure out how to reach out to people, it massively beneficial to you. It could be beneficial in a professional way, in a personal way, in a social way. It can be beneficial to you a lot. So that networking ability that AIESEC provides is humongous. The second thing, Jack, you mentioned about the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of started my own gig in the pandemic. And what mattered was you really needed to be a self-starter. So in AIESEC, you look around you in AIESEC, is there anybody who's not a self-starter? I presume zero. Everyone's a self-starter. And that's important. In a pandemic, it's humongously important. So mix that with self-starter, ability to network, and the ability to think globally. We never had Zoom 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And today, it really doesn't matter where you sit. You could be sitting in a Starbucks or any coffee shop and talking to somebody about 20,000 miles away or whatever it is, and doing business. That really didn't happen. But that's what AIESEC taught you. That self-starter bit, that networking bit, the ability to think globally, and a whole host of other things, that kind of gave you that kind of secret recipe to be successful.
Amazing answer. So to all the participants today, remember to take a pen and a piece of paper and note down the secret recipes that all the panelists are going to share with all of you in this panel discussion. I'm passing the floor to you, Ray, as well. I want to know your thoughts in this question as well. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna speak. I'm gonna draw on my experience as an executive search recruiter. I've been in various I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews for senior level executives in some of the key competencies, and I've even tried to headhunt AIESECers who are in other impactful organizations. And some of the key competencies, so how I'm going to answer this, I'm going to answer it twofold. So one is skills and competencies, and then the learnings and experience. So in terms of skills and competencies, one very key one that I have seen is presentation, both verbal and visual and written. So how are you presenting yourself? How are you packaging yourself to the outside environment that doesn't really know about AIESEC, doesn't know what the vice president of talent management does or vice president of OGX does? How are you able to clearly articulate that your experience is, this is what your experience will translate to in the corporate world? Yeah. So presentation and learning how to package yourself is very, very key. That's one. Two is managing through crisis. In AIESEC, we have very many challenges. Just yesterday, I was at AIESEC in Kenya dinner, and everything was supposed to go according to plan. The OC and MC had made all the necessary precautions, but a day to the event, our Minister of Health and Safety for Kenya announced that you can no longer have this event. We needed to think through through the policies that have just been made. What can we do, and how can the event still be successful? And the MC and OC were able to turn it around, and we had a really successful event. So managing through crisis is something that through the pandemic, as AIESECers, we've been able to learn how to do that. So we are able to quickly adapt, which is my third competency. Our adaptability and resilience. How do you stay the course even when things are not going well? Yeah. And the final competency I would speak to is in terms of team management. Yeah. So as AIESECers, we've had amazing opportunities to collaborate across the board. We've been able to collaborate with a multicultural team. We've been able to collaborate, just as Madhuru said, with people who are 20,000 miles away. And this is something that current corporates are really struggling with. Yeah, even last year I even started a consultancy on the side just to support organizations and startups to be able to host just a Zoom seminar, and I was paid for that. So we're currently doing it here voluntary, but I was paid for that service. So these are some of the competencies that I have seen play into the corporate world that are very, very key. And the final bit about your experience and your learnings, everything you do in AIESEC, let me tell you, all those difficult situations and amazing experiences you've had in the corporate world, it really, really helps you. Yeah, I won't go into detail, but I'm just gonna say, if you want to jump into the corporate world, trust me, you will have an easier time than anyone else who's jumping in just from campus to the corporate sector. Yeah.
Yes, true.
That is an amazing answer as well. I think, again, it's just that all these things in AIESEC that are given to us and enabled and empowered by the entire AIESEC community, it is actually very beneficial in the in the transition towards, after AIESEC into the corporate sector as well, because so much of these skills are used on a daily basis, and we're just, training it and getting it for free in AIESEC as well. Obviously we have to invest our time and energy. For example, hosting a Zoom link, how to make sure you record things using Excel, Google Sheet. These are some of the ones, basic skills that, corporates actually do prefer. So on that note as well, right? Thank you so much, Madhur and Ray, for your amazing answer. I want to jump to Tola and Raphael to ask a little bit something of a follow-up question in regards to this. Now, obviously, both of you have been in the corporate sector for some time as well. And one of the main thing is, in this call today, we have young alumni or maybe, AIESECers that are still in AIESEC. So what would you advise young people that maybe are fresh out of AIESEC or is still in AIESEC that are looking to transition into the corporate sector, specifically when they're applying for a job? And what are you going to advise them to look for in terms of job description and the pace of career development? So maybe I'll pass the floor to Natalia first. Natalia first. Raphael is after. Yeah, Natalia. What would you advise young people? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Jack. So actually, and just to give you a hint on how we hire people at Google, we look for like 3 out of the 4 things that we look for are skills that we develop in AIESEC. One is the general cognitive ability, which what we call in AIESEC being solutions oriented, is that reason to plan, solve problems, think abstractedly, that have that analytical ability to think about a problem and how to solve it. The second one is actually leadership, and in Google we use the same leadership word that we also use in AIESEC. And leadership is about managing projects, getting things done, working as a team, striving for self-development. So these are things like that you also that we at Google also look for people that we also like encouraging in AIESEC a lot. Another thing that we call is the Googleness. It's about like culture, and is that it's someone that we look for people that thrives in a fast-paced environment, that thrives in ambiguity, that values feedback, that effectively challenges the status quo, and do the right thing, basically. So as you can see, like these are 3 things that we look into candidates out of 4 things, the fourth being the role-related knowledge. So that's more like about the job description and like, okay, that you have experience in the things that they're looking for. But you see, like 3 out of 4 things are things that are just like soft skills and soft skills that we develop in AIESEC. So I will really put that first because again, like we hire people that look for like have those like skills already developed rather than knowing so much about the job. So I will just like encourage people in AIESEC to put like to know that they have those skills, and to actually go ahead and apply for your dream company. Because sometimes when it happened to me, I don't know if everyone after AIESEC was super confident of getting a job. It didn't happen to me. Like I was like a little bit like sometimes this job looks a little bit too high and I don't even know if I have the skills. But then when in the process, then I understood that actually most of the things that they look for were about like the soft skills and know that I had like the job experience. So I will really encourage you to apply for that dream job if you already know what it is.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I guess that's a little bit of this imposter syndrome that all of us will feel somewhere in our job application timeline. So with that in mind, I want to just jump to Kate first before we will take a quick pause because our 7th and final panelist has managed to join this panel discussion. But just to answer this question, Kate, I'm interested in your opinion in this. So passing the floor to you, Kate.
Thank you, Jack. I believe, first of all, everything all these panelists have spoken about in my experience in the corporate world is absolutely true. Your time at AIESEC is absolutely not wasted. Everything that you're learning is for a reason, and when you join corporate, you're going to apply it. But my first advice to anybody listening to this is learn to translate your AIESEC experience to people in the outside world. In corporate, people are thinking benefits and money. So how is your experience going to make them money and how is it going to benefit them? So obviously you cannot tell them that I was a LCVP, I was MCVP. They do not understand that. But what they do understand is I was managing teams. I was recruiting people and I was retaining talent. They understand that as finance, I was making profit. How much profit was I making? Be able to quantify your experience. That's very important when you're trying to be out there in the world and put yourself out there. Quantify your experience and translate it into something corporate would understand. The second thing I would advise is apply everything you have learned in AIESEC in your work. Don't just go there and do what the job description says. Don't sit there and say, okay, it says I start 8 to 5 and then I do A, B, C, and D. You have to put in your leadership skills. You have to identify the gaps that you are identifying in the social life while you're in the nonprofit sector. Learn to apply it here in the corporate sector. You're in a team, you can observe gaps, especially as an AIESEC, you're in such a great position to identify gaps and to act on them. So learn how to be a leader, speak out, stand out, collaborate, and show up. This is going to give you such a huge advantage over all the other people. Thank you.
Amazing. Yes, definitely showing up is the best thing that we can do as an AIESEC as well. And, you know, AIESECers are loud, we're brave, you know, showing up is literally our gig. So with that in mind, speaking about showing up, I want to again extend a warm welcome to our 7th and final panelist who's managed to join us today. James, who has been pinned on the screen right now. He is the Quality and Training Analyst for Tata Consultancy Services. And I want to again give you the space for a very quick self-introduction, as well as answering the first question on the floor. Why should young people join the corporate sector? James, passing the floor to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jack. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I mixed up the time zones. It was a bit of a difficulty. Good to be here. My name is James Akuma. I am originally from Nigeria. I also was a member of AIESEC in Nigeria. I was in AIESEC for about 7 years. I took a couple of positions in AIESEC during my time. I was a MCP of AIESEC Nigeria. I also worked in the regional office. I was MCVP for TM, LCP, LCVP, NSTs. Pretty much I did it all. It was pretty much one of, I would say, the best experiences I ever had in my life. And if I could do it all again, I wouldn't change anything, except for some of the mistakes. For the question, I think that as individuals, we all have to identify where it is we want to apply our strengths the most. Now, AIESEC is basically in the social development space, and not everybody might want to pursue a career in the long term in social development and effecting social change on that sort of non-profit level. Some people are more interested in, I would say, the dynamic environment of the corporate sector. And this is something that you have to make up your mind. I would say towards the very end of your AIESEC experience is something that you pretty much have to start deciding and start defining the career path for yourself, where you want to see yourself in the next couple of years. Where do you think your strengths can best be applied? So do you think you would best work in the corporate space, or you think that you want to continue in social development, the non-for-profit route? Mm-hmm. It all depends on your strengths. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. People have completely different interests. People have completely different needs, and you're animated and inspired by different things. So I would always advise people to sort of go with what works for them. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Lovely. Since while I have you on the floor as well, I also want to again extend this floor to you to answer the question as well. Since we're talking about advice, right? What would you actually advise young alumni that's just maybe looking to transition into the corporate sector? What would you advise them when they're applying for a job in the corporate sector? What's your thought in this?
So for job applications, right?
Correct. What are some of the things that they should be on the lookout for?
Okay, so I think that one of the things that is very important is a company that you share the same values with. I find this to be very pivotal to helping you in the long term navigate your career. And a lot of times we come from, I would say, a very idealistic background with AIESEC. You know, the way we see the world, we see the world through a very different set of lenses that people in the corporate world would see the world. It's very, very different. We're more idealistic, we're more altruistic in our approach to how we do things. And that sometimes can be very different from the corporate world. You see things like corporate greed. There are so many difficult, I mean, sometimes there are even cases of like corruption and all of these things that happen in the corporate space. It's very important that you find a company that you think is actually trying to do good in the world and shares the same values with you. The other thing I would say is that you need to find a way to effectively communicate the unique value that you got from AIESEC in your application. This is something that a lot of times we make the mistake of doing. We still end up using AIESEC speak when we're trying to apply for jobs. And a lot of these companies, they might appreciate to a fair level what you've done in AIESEC, but they don't have a complete understanding of what you've done. So you have to find a way to effectively translate all of the unique skills that you got from AIESEC into a strong and solid application that you can put forward to a prospective employer. I think this is one of the key things that I learned sort of the hard way at the early stages, because we sometimes think that because we're from AIESEC, we're awesome and everybody would want to listen to us or hear what we have to say. It's not always the case. They want you to be able to speak to them in a language that they understand from the corporate sector. So yeah, those are two things that I would say.
Lovely. And I think, you know, there is a common theme in all the answers that's been provided by the panelists in this question, right? It's all about being able to cater our expectations as well as the, you know, showcasing our experiences, packaging it in a way that is less of a more AIESEC terminology, but looking at how you can actually package that and quantify it in the eyes of a corporate sector that would make sense for them. Because ultimately, we are glorified in AIESEC, but we need to prove our worth in when we switch to a different sector as well. So looking at that as well, right? Again, zooming back out, there is, working again, in AIESEC, we talk a lot about, impact. We put a lot of emphasis and value in like, this is the thing that I'm doing. This is the direct outcome that I'm getting, that's why, we do the things that we do. But in a corporate setting, very often, because we're a part of this much larger and much complex structure, impact can seem very far away and, quote unquote, disconnected with our daily work. So I just wanted to get the opinion from Tola as well as Raphael. What are some of the methods that you would suggest to doing, your corporate work to keep your passion as well as that sense of impact and relevance alive? What's your opinion in this, Tola?
Okay, thanks, Jack. So I think for me, as you were talking, I remember very vividly, I felt burnt out a couple of times in the office. I haven't done about 20 years and, you just keep going and keep going. And after some time, you just feel, oh no, I'm tired. But, I've got a job to do. My ambitions were still there. Even though I had set short-term and long-term goals, I still needed to do quite a couple of things to keep the passion alive. So I think the number one thing I always tell people, and as I may also mentor people, is tell them, understand your impact. With AIESEC, you've got to know what the impact is. And I tell, understand your impact. It's like somebody who gives the vote of thanks after a very long session. And then you feel, oh, it's just a vote of thanks, but the impact of that vote of thanks might mean a whole lot. Yeah, it's a very small role, but sometimes it's the most important role. Yeah, so it's the ability to understand how your single role affects the importance or the import of the entire session that has happened. So you've got to be able to connect and understand what your impact is. And more importantly, just embrace the adventure. Don't be afraid to make errors. Don't be a perfectionist. Yep. Being a perfectionist will suck you out. Don't be a perfectionist. Embrace the adventure. Don't be afraid to take risk. Take the risk, but more importantly, the learnings. Take the learnings, yeah? Yep. I mean, you can't continuously, you can't go on making mistakes. You got to make the mistake, take the learnings, embrace the adventure. And I think that's, it keeps me going. It keeps me going a lot, and I really, really rely on those two things. What is my impact? How does my role affect the entire organization? If I don't do mine, who else is affected? Who are my stakeholders? How do I let them down? I don't want to be the weakest link in the chain. Yeah.
Yep.
So what is that my impact? I embrace the adventure. Yeah, I'm in this job. And
Yep.
you know, one of the panelists had mentioned, and the last time I checked, the corporate organization wasn't an NGO. They're in the business to make money. So I simply just embrace the adventure, because in AIESEC, we're not afraid, we're adventurous.
Yep.
I embraced the adventure. I threw myself into it. I was willing to learn. I was willing to do a lot more things. And then the things that are a little too hard, that take a little too long, or a little too uncertain, always come out the best impact. Never be afraid to say no, just take the adventure. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. It's all about that sense of adventure and getting those learnings from all these experiences. It's okay sometimes to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make bad mistakes. But again, it's all about taking learning from that and not repeating the same mistakes that we grow. And so on that note as well, I just want to pass the floor to Raphael, just to sort of, give us your thought in this question as well. What do you think are some of the methods that you could suggest all the participants today?
Great question, Jack. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is to separate the social from impact, right? Because I think there's social impact and there is impact. So in social, right, I think you basically have two options, right? So either you join an organization that is committed to certain impacts that you are passionate for, or you just admit that you're going to have, a job and you're going to look for your impact outside. So I had the time of my life that I was working for a company, and a lot of the impact that I felt, the social impact that I was doing, was still connected to AIESEC, right? So I was mentoring MCs, I was helping them to do some technology projects, right? So that was outside of work. Now, when I joined Salesforce is a company that is very unique because we commit to 1% of our products, 1% of the time of the employees, and 1% of our profits to invest in the community. And as employees, we can decide. So what does it mean 1% of the time? I have 7 days a year that I can invest in whatever community project I want, right? So for some time, I was investing that time to be in the board of a local chapter of AIESEC here in Singapore. But another project that I have done is I help a bone marrow association that basically helps people that have bone marrow disease to find donors by using our marketing platform to reach out and find more people that are volunteers to donate, right? So for me, it was important to be part of a company that have an impact.
Ay, me asustaste.
Right? Now, on the other side, that is the...
Es de ese, ¿qué cosa está haciendo la gente? ¿Qué?
Hold on a second, yeah. Let me see who
Yeah,
is...
no problem.
My apologies.
Huh?
I'm going to mute you for a bit, yeah? Okay, amazing. Hafa, back to you.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm very Mayo brain, right? I can only do one thing at one time. Either I'm listening or am I speaking, right? So thanks, I appreciate it for that. The second part of my answer is the individual impact, right? And that very quickly, I separated in 3 points. So the first one, I really empathize with Tola's point, right? So it's all about understanding the why. And I think the more you grow, right, you shouldn't expect people to tell you the why. It's really an individual journey for you to connect with the why, right? So you could ask 3 people that are building a bridge, what are they doing? One of them can say, I'm connecting bricks. The second one could say, I'm building a bridge. The third one could say, I'm connecting 2 countries, right? It's the same job, but the meaning they take, right? So really understand why your job is important, right? How does it connect to the mission of the company? For me, I'm very passionate about the experience of customers. So last year, I was working over a weekend to support a customer that is this number 3 largest telecom company in Indonesia, right? They have 80 million customers. And I know that the platform we were building was serving those 80 million people that many times are not high income, right? They just have a prepaid phone and they need support. So that is how I, got energy, right? To think like, hey, I'm really having an impact. The second thing is your job description in a corporation or anywhere else is a starting point, is a minimum, is not a fence, is not a limitation. I think many people, especially early in their career, think, hey, I'd really like to move there, but I need to have a different job because my job only allows me to go until here. Seriously? Like, who told you that you cannot do that, right? I'm a person that I prefer to ask for, sorry, rather than to ask for permission. So, but first, remember, right? Do your job. And then you look for other things. If you're not doing your job and you're trying to do other things, that gives you trouble, especially in corporations, right? But if you're doing your job and you want to do more, most of the companies are going to really help you on that. And the last thing is, keep in mind that a career is like a snowball, right? In the beginning, some people are going to go straight to entrepreneurship because they feel that they have a higher impact than in a big corporation. In the big corporation, we are all small parts of a big system, right? So just understand that, for certain things, it takes time. And one thing that really helps me is there is research that says that we underestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can achieve in 3, 5, or 10, right? So be patient, right? Sometimes, you cannot conquer the world in 1 year or in 1 day, but the things you can do in 5 or 10 years are massive, right? So be a little bit patient. Gary Vaynerchuk, if anyone is following, he always says, right? He looks very aggressive, but he says, my number one virtue is to be patient. So back to you, Jack.
Lovely. Again, it's just an understanding that Rome is not built in 1 day, impact is not delivered in 1 day, and it's always brick by brick by brick. So with that in mind as well, right, just a quick reminder to all the participants today as well, that Pigeonhole is the platform that we're using to deposit live questions. You're able to put in some of the questions and you can vote on these questions as well. So at this point of time, I wanted to just again zoom back out and go to Pigeonhole and see if there are any sort of interesting questions that you guys wanted to ask our amazing team of panelists today. So looking at Pigeonhole, there is one question that is actually very interesting that brings back to the conversation just then about how, like AIESEC is a place for us to learn and to fail, and that you need to take the opportunity and take that leap of faith and join the corporate sector to learn from failure as well. So I just want to maybe get the thought from Kate, Ray, and Madhur. How much room is there for people to fail or experience failure in the corporate world? AIESEC's pretty lenient in this, but what's your thought in this? Maybe we can start with Kate. Just right before we start, my apologies. We'll try to keep the answer within 90 to 120 seconds for, just to make sure that we can squeeze in the time.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Jack. That's a really great question, actually. What I'm going to say is that within AIESEC and other voluntary opportunities and internships, you actually have more room to fail, learn, and grow. Take that as your learning experience. When you step into corporate, however, like I said before, you have no choice but to be the best, present your best, wake up and show up, and no excuses. So the leverage or room you will get personally as an individual to fail depends on the value or benefit you give to that company, which is why you said before, quantify how much benefits you can give to the company. So for example, if your experience and your talent are way up there, for example, you're someone presenting as Jack Ma, you have probably much more room to fail than somebody who's just starting out because you're not giving the company enough value to take you on as a loss. So keep this in mind whenever you're presented with a situation where you might do something that is wrong. Ask yourself, how much would it cost the company? How much would it cost them to keep you? And how much less would it cost them to release you? Thank you.
Lovely. It's all about cost benefit analysis. So on that note, passing the floor to Ray. What's your thought in this?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on to add what Kate has just said. It's very important to also understand what's the value that you're bringing and what's the value that that the company is giving you. Yeah. So one competency that I'd love to talk about that I feel that would be essential for us to learn is how do you manage upwards? So how do you have that conversation with your manager and tell them, this is where I messed up, and this is how I can be able to improve. I've done so many mistakes, but the one thing that my manager in all my performance appraisals has been consistent in saying is that the one thing I appreciate about you is when you make a mistake, you own up to it, and then we never have to speak about it again. So how do you learn how to have those difficult conversations with your manager in the sense that you just mentioned, yeah, this is what I've done, and this is what the impact it will have, the negative impact it will have, but this is how I can be able to fix it. Live our AIESEC value, being solution oriented. Yeah, back to you, Jack.
Lovely. Last but definitely not least, let's go to Madhur to get some of your opinion in this question as well.
Sure, I'll divide it into 3 parts. The first is every corporation spends a fair amount of money on its employees for learning and development and giving them bandwidth to improve. Everyone does. So that's number 1. Always remember it. Second, every corporation will judge you. And just like you were judged in school, you will be judged in a corporation. And many schools, what they do is they do this parabola where 5% of the bottom is eked out, the 5% at the top is really great, and 90% sticks in the middle, right? Corporations do that. And over a period of time, the bottom 5% moves out. It may be the bottom 10%, 20%, really depends on corporation to corporation. So the second thing, always remember it. The third, whenever you're in a corporation, get a mentor. It's really important to have a mentor. And if you like somebody who's senior, and that person could be 1 year senior, 20 year senior, 30 year senior, or even just 5 year senior, whatever, approach them and just talk to them and say, hey, I've just joined. I'd love to have a mentor. And is there any way that I can get one? I thought you'd be the right person. Get a mentor. So remember these 3 things, guys. Corporations spend a lot of money on people. Corporations will move the lower ones out. So the chance for error for the lower ones obviously is low. They will move out. And number 3, get a mentor. It'll really help you in order to improve yourself and further yourself.
Lovely, amazing answers from 3 of our panelists today. It's all about understanding where we position ourselves and where our position is in the company. Making sure that we are more of an asset than a liability is the main message of this discussion today. And of course, since we have about 6 minutes left as well, I also wanted to again answer some of the questions that have been submitted in Pigeonhole. Just drawing from one of the points just then, managing upwards. Maybe if I can just get the thoughts from James and Tola. How do you reckon in a corporation, when you have managers and managers have their managers and managers have their managers, before you even reach the the senior executive and CEO, how do you then manage upwards? What's your thought in this? We'll start with James. Let's keep it under 1 minute and 30 seconds. So then we'll have a bit more time to answer the last few questions. James?
Okay, real quick, I would say in my experience, developing personal relationships with the individuals that lead and manage you has been one of the best ways that I've been able to deal with this. At the end of the day, we're all human beings with our motivations, our interests, our needs, and our specific goals. It's very important that you dig deep to have a deeper understanding of the person that you're working with, what actually interests that person, what are the difficulties that the person is seeing from a bird's eye view that you might not be seen as a subordinate. This, I think, has been very, very helpful in my experience. Second thing I would say is that problem solving and crisis management is a great skill to have. Never sweep things under the carpet. Open communication and honesty, transparency. These are values that would be of great help to anyone. Yeah. Back to you, Jack.
Lovely, lovely. Honesty and transparency, very, very important. And understanding who your manager is and catering, again, back to the communication style. So passing the floor to Tola, what are your thoughts and opinions in this as well? Tola?
Yes, I was unmuting myself. Thank you very much. And I think, James, you've done an excellent job, I must say, because in all honesty, you can take interpersonal skills and relationship away from that question. Yeah?
Yeah.
It all boils down to being able to demonstrate whether you're in a senior role, you're in a junior role. The difference you make and become attractive to people is the strong people skills that play a significant role in differentiating one employee from the other or one job applicant from the other. It all boils down to the strong people skills. They play a significant role in the differentiation. And of course, you must also be able to lead exemplary, because even though you're not a leader, like you say, your boss's boss, you must have the ability to influence not only yourself, but your peers before you can even influence your seniors, your subordinates, your colleagues. So peer influence is always also very important. Again, you must have relationship skills. You must have interpersonal skills. And you know, it all boils down to relationships. It boils down to being authentic. It boils down to being a genuine and earning the respect of your colleagues, respect of your subordinates, respect of your peers, and then the respect of your seniors will come also. The other thing is the fact that James talked about not sweeping under the carpet. Being in denial of something you're unhappy about is not something you should do. And also in a corporate world, taking it personally, it doesn't help. Sometimes it's never about you. It might just be in the process. It might be in the values not aligning with you. It's just never about you. And the earlier you get on with that, the better for you. So don't be in denial. It's never, it's not about you. Maybe it's about the process. Find out where exactly the challenge is. And of course, interpersonal skills makes the difference all the time. Thank you.
Lovely, amazing answer in this. And again, on that note as well, right, again, leads very nicely into the next question as well, which happens to be the second last question of this panel discussion. We'll have about a minute for each panelist. I apologize because time is a resource that we cannot afford to extend more for this 3-hour-long session today. Now, on that note as well, right, there is a question that's actually submitted in the pigeonhole, is that most AIESECers are not specialists. You know, like I've known, you know, a friend of mine who joined AIESEC as a finance member, becoming LCVP, MCVP, all the way up, it's all just finance. But most AIESECers, like myself, are ultra generalists. We hop around in different functions, have different kinds of skills. So with that in mind, I want to get the understanding from Natalia as well as Raphael. What are your thoughts of AIESECers being trained as a generalist? What's the value in this in a corporate setting? Let's try to keep it in 1.5 minutes each, if possible. Passing the floor first to Raphael.
Sure. So, Jack, I think this is, I'm going to answer in two sides, and it's two sides of the same coin. So I think one big strength of being a generalist is you need to learn very fast, and you need to talk to people that are doing different jobs, right? So I think something that many times people in corporations struggle is because they have been working in a department for so long that they have challenges to understand what another department, or if you are inside, to understand what a customer needs, right? So big advantage of moving around is exactly to have that curiosity and the ability to understand the perspective of someone that is doing something different from you. Now, you need to demonstrate this learning. And I think Madhur mentioned this in the beginning, also in ability to learn fast. And I think, you know, going around is one way, but really hacking the process on how do you learn. These days, you know, knowledge is abundant, right? You can read books, you can listen to books. There's so many courses. So if you're applying for a job that has gaps, are you going to wait until you get the job so the company teaches you? Or are you going to press the gas pedal and learn by yourself and demonstrate that you have done some self-learning? So I think that is definitely going to be a big differential when you are applying. Back to Natalia.
Lovely. And Natalia, you have the floor to close off this question.
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, Jack. Actually, it's a good question for me because I came from being a project manager. I was VD in AIESEC. I went into marketing, and right now I'm in sales. So I've been having 4 different careers in the short 8 years of my life. So I've been jumping a lot, as you can see. And as I said before, actually 3 out of the 4 competences that we look at for the people that we hire at Google, 3 out of 4 is like in regards to leadership, problem solving, that you thrive in ability, that you're open to feedback, and just 1 is about the role related knowledge. So I think it's important that you develop those skills, like which are like that you actually develop on AIESEC. And my advice here will be to leverage on AIESEC by like getting as much experience as you can by working. Because I know like AIESEC is the moment to be out of your comfort zone, to work, to try new things, to even if those things are completely different to each other, at some point you might not know how those points will connect in the future. But try as many things as you can. Like this will be my advice. And also AIESEC is a great opportunity for you to find what you like, because it was not always clear for me where I wanted to be. And that's why I guess I changed so much into careers. But right now I work at sales and I have a senior role. And I came to have a senior role in sales, even though my sales experience has always been just being BD in AIESEC, business development in AIESEC for 1 year. And 7 years of my life, I didn't do sales. And I ended up in a senior sales role because of all the other skills.
Lovely. That is such an amazing answer and such an amazing discussion. Now, again, I regret to inform all of you that we have run slightly over time. So unfortunately, we will not be able to address all the questions in the pigeonhole, which is symbolic of life. You know, sometimes, you know, things don't go the way that we want to. If I have a magic wand that I can, you know, extend this time magically, I would keep us all here forever to ask questions with this group of panel. So as we move into the last question for the closing of this panel discussion, I want to again keep this as short as possible. So each of the panelists will be given 45 seconds to answer this question. And this is again symbolic to the corporate setting as well. Tight timeline, massive deliverable, and hugely impactful to the work that we do as well. So the last question of the day is that, you know, in the pursuit of self-fulfillment and impact to the society, in the first few years of leaving AIESEC, what should young people focus in developing when they join the corporate setting? So I'm interested in hearing, again, what is the one thing that our panelists will suggest and advise for you guys, the participants today, to focus on developing when you first join the corporate setting? Let's start with Tola. You have 45 seconds.
I'll spend less than 45 seconds, very short. My advice is smile, ask questions, and be interested. In fact, I tell people when they come for interviews, practice saying yes, because the opportunities are there when you say yes. But when you complain, you don't have an opportunity.
We'll close in 40 seconds. So
I'm done.
Sorry, Tola. Yeah, amazing. Natalia, 10 seconds, please.
Have a beginner's mind and have a growth mindset.
Raphael.
Yeah, I just second Natalia's. That is exactly what I had in mind.
Whatever you do, be associated with 2 things: digitization and ESG. They're going to grow.
Lovely. Ray?
Stay humble, stay hungry, and stay disciplined.
And James?
Great.
Learn how to channel your entrepreneurial energy within the company.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We'll send the LinkedIn profile after this. Thank you very much again for all your participation. We'll see you back in the main room.